So most of you know by this point about the college protests. They're happening all around the country, and lo and behold, my alma mater, UChicago, the school where fun comes to die, is not isolated in any way from these protests right here. Recently, there was an encampment that was built at UChicago, and from it, you would expect maybe some people just going around and drinking lattes and protesting and asking for vegan donations of food right there. But watch this.
Very early, she has the latest. Joni, what has unfolded since you arrived?
Well, the campus police, as you said, moved in just before 5 a.m. And these protesters have been holding the line now for 2 hours. There's a bullhorn behind us, so it's very loud. Christopher was on the inside when it happened.
Some context. This takes place in the context of the Israel-Hamas conflict, and essentially right before the invasion into Rafah. So the protesters right now are protesting against the United States complicity in all these issues right here. And by the way, Christopher probably isn't this guy's name. I mean, like, they do not essentially disclose people's real names right there for fear of consequences from administration. Let's go.
Describe what happened in the quadrangle this morning.
Yeah, it was horrific. They waited like cowards until every single student was asleep in their tent, basically. And then they stormed in, maybe 40 or 50 of them with riot gear, screaming. They started throwing wood planks, throwing chairs, throwing absolutely everything in any direction to destroy the camp as fast as possible, to suppress this movement as fast as possible. And in fact, one of the chairs that they threw came within maybe 3 inches of hitting my girlfriend in the head. And they had just woken us up.
So it was dark because it was
Fun fact. UChicago's private police force is actually one of the largest in the entire nation. Yeah. Anyway.
Guys, you had a warning that they were coming, but they didn't for a while, and so everybody was...
We had no warning. Sure, everyone was safe. I mean, it was chaos. It was terrifying. Yeah.
So you were able to get out. I understand that students are being threatened with disciplinary action for being in there.
They gave us some ridiculous notice out here saying that participants in the quad encampment, which no longer exists thanks to them, are facing like an interim leave of absence as well as a criminal trespass charge. I have no idea if that's just a scare tactic or if it's real, but it doesn't matter because the difference between us and people like these cops is that there are limits to when we continue following orders. And when you're talking about a genocide visited upon a colonized population of 2 million people trapped in a ghetto that's as long as a marathon and 6 miles wide, when that ghetto is being systematically starved, slaughtered, every hospital bombed, every university bombed, 70% of homes destroyed, 40,000 people murdered, 15,000 children murdered, the entire population on the brink of starvation, we say, and if our government and our academic institutions are complicit in this, there comes a point where we say we're not following orders and it doesn't matter what you do to us because there are principles and there are human lives that matter more than our careers and our futures, and that's what separates us from people like Alivisatos, the coward president of this university, and these coward cops that come in terrorizing an encampment while people are sleeping.
You've been standing at this line linked arm in arm with other protesters. What has happened here?
What's happening here, you'd have to ask them. Apparently they're trying to intimidate us, trying to suppress the protest that is continuing to grow. I think that they thought they could basically terrify us into inaction, into flight. But this is what this university has never understood, has never accepted, has never reckoned with about this student movement, and not just at UChicago but around the country, is that the commitment to Gaza runs deeper than fears for our safety, fears for our careers, fears for our paychecks. It is a fundamental obligation we have as citizens of a country that is presiding over this genocide, arming this genocide, and as students at a university that is invested in those same weapons manufacturers and that is partnered with the same apartheid institutions that train that military and develop its technology.
There was some pushing and shoving. I don't know who was pushing or shoving, but I know that there was tension here at the line. You've tried to have a conversation with some of these police officers.
Yeah, I've been talking to them this whole time. I've been asking them what it would take for them to stop following orders. I would ask them, how many kids have to die? So if you say 15,000 kids are killed, they're still willing to violently suppress a national movement, raising the alarm that this needs to stop, that the U.S. complicity needs to stop. So what if it was 50,000 kids, 200,000 kids, 1 million kids? What if the whole Gaza ghetto?
Do you know if there are next steps here?
For them? For me, the next step is a simple one, whatever form it takes, which is to continue fighting with every breath we have, with everything we have, for the people of Gaza, because the blood of those kids is on our hands. It's on all of our hands, whether we like it or not. If we're U.S. citizens, if we're UChicago students, we are implicated in this horror that is being visited with total impunity because of U.S. Security Council vetoes by the state of Israel. I'm a student, yes, I'm a PhD student, yeah.
If you face discipline, what then?
Again, I don't care. It doesn't matter. There are things that matter more than my academic future. And certainly every one of those children that is being murdered, starved, maimed, whose parents are having to choose, do I let this kid starve first or that one? This is such an ugly reality of such great magnitude that to even think, to really entertain questions about what might happen if Paul puts me on a leave of absence is ridiculous. And it's insulting to the memory of every child that has been murdered in the course of this genocide with the full complicity of the United States, of Joe Biden, and of people like President Alivisatos and his cops that he sticks on us in the middle of the night. They're hypocrites, they're cowards, and the blood of Gaza's kids is on their hands too. The difference between them and us is that we know that and we reckon with it because we have a duty to them while they hide from the truth. And they won't even admit that a single university has been bombed.
Thank you so much.
Damn. Bro spit some facts. And bear in mind, the guy had riot police surrounding him, and he managed to pull that off right there. I mean, Christopher, you have just become the hero of an entire generation, and you can see that really on social media. And that is the bravest, most coherent summary of the entire Israeli-Palestine conflict that I've heard throughout the entire 7 months of this conflict. But you see, just because I find Christopher's speech impressive, does that mean that I think that Paul Alivisatos is amoral, a genocide promoter, or a horrible human being out to destroy the entire world? Yeah, no. The UChicago statement out there, it does say that freedom of speech is not a license for disruption. That is how I've always understood the Chicago principles right there. The protests seem to rest on this idea that we need somehow to comply in some way with what people are actually asking us to do. It crosses the boundary really from speech into action. Having people listen to what you ask for and forcing them to comply is not really freedom of speech. There's a difference between having people listen because you're free to speak and having people take action simply because you demanded things. You can express yourself, you can say things, but you don't have a right to impede other people from their expressing themselves. So if you were to have the highest moral authority right there, you would have to contend why it is that your actions do not count as disruption. If you're simply just telling the university that if you don't engage with us, if you don't do what we want, then you're necessarily repressing us. I don't necessarily find that the most intellectually honest response, and for that reason, I do have my reservations right here. But what I will say though is that Christopher, brother, that is the most impressive example of speech I've heard throughout the entire Israeli-Palestine conflict. And you did it with such calm, poise, and erudition right there that it just makes me really, really proud as a UChicago alum. So congratulations on that. I hope that your will for the people of Gaza is going to be rewarded as you reckon with these things, both as a student of the University of Chicago and a citizen of the United States, that you'll take that reckoning to a better place, even as you kind of make use of the knowledge that got you to Chicago in the very first place. So here's to putting you in office one day and to the power of the next generation. Thank you, snaps, snaps, and see you soon.